Hello friends, and welcome to Air Supply, a podcast from J.O. Collective. My name is Joshua O'Connor. I started this podcast after going through a slightly unexpected change in my career. I found myself looking for answers to so many things, mostly, what now? Realizing that I was naive about many aspects of myself and many of the big challenges in business and by implication society. When searching, I found many interesting resources, but with an equal amount of snake oil. I found myself learning the most and the best when speaking to others. I hope you can too. My first guest is Daria Ibrulj, the founder of FireUp, an executive coaching business. For a decade, she worked in the elite levels of investment banking and private equity, but latterly suffered a burnout and then, crucially, recovered. I learned so much from her about what life is really like in these elite financial institutions, what happens when you work too hard without adequate rest, how to recover from exhaustion and burnout, and why family and friends are so important, even when you are in a job which demands all of you. I hope you enjoy.
Okay, I'll give you the highlight. So I am an ex-investment banker and private equity investor turned executive coach and creator of FireUp. That's the 20-second version.
Thank you very much. Let's just talk about your background.
Yeah.
Tell me about where you were born and what that means to you and how that shaped your personality and choices.
Yeah. I'm from Bosnia, so I was born there in Sarajevo during the war. And when we moved over to London, I was very young. That is a part of me that has shaped me, whether it's my personality or the choices that I've made. And I'd say, that there are many, many facets of it, but I could probably boil it down to three. One, it's given me an intense work ethic. So when you come to a country and you have nothing, at least economically you have very little, then what you do have is your knowledge, your brain, your work ethic. And so you work really hard to make something out of nothing. And that's something that I've carried along with me as long as I know. The second thing it's given me, and I'm smiling because it's not that great, and I'm really aware of it, is this intense, probably unhealthy need for security, financial, job, status, whatever it is. But this idea that if I have that, then things will be okay. And I don't want to go back to not having it. And what it feels like, whether it's shame or just annoying, frustrating.
Your values, how does your background shape those?
Yeah, a lot. Friends, family, this idea of community is huge. That's something that's really, really important to me. And having the people around me, being there for them, that is more important than this need for security for me. Food is a huge one. That's how we show love.
What are the Bosnian staple delicacies?
So absolute favorite is burek. That's savory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just phyllo pastry with either mincemeat or cheese, which is kind of like a feta cheese, but it is slightly different, or spinach, a bit like a Greek spanakopita, or you get burek in Turkey, but the OG is Bosnian, specifically Sarajevo. You want that.
Good to know. Well, obviously we don't have anyone from Turkey here to state their case for why it's the best, but we'll take your word for it. What did you study at university?
I did PPE, politics, philosophy and economics at Warwick. Loved it. Okay.
And then you went into investment banking. Yes. How did you end up there?
A combination. So first of all, Warwick was pretty good at attracting all the different companies. And so even from the first year, I was getting my feelers out. Do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to be an economist and go to economics consultancy? Do I want to be a consultant, an accountant, a banker? And banking was always the one that seemed to appeal to me the most, both from, it needed that balance of qualitative and quantitative knowledge. It had the most variety, in my opinion. People will say different things. They'll say, no, but law has the most variety or whatever else. It was prestigious. It was well paid. It seemed to tick all the boxes. And the other thing was, it felt like by going there, I was filling a missing piece in my knowledge. So I went to uni to study PPE because I felt like I really wanted to understand the world better than I might have done at that point. And as I was finishing the degree, I then realized, well, I still struggle with some of the jargon when I read, say, the Financial Times. And, no one in my family has ever opened the Financial Times. So I couldn't go to them and go, well, what's an IPO? And what's what does it mean when someone debt finances something? And so, that sort of need for more knowledge and that extra knowledge gave me security.
But when you are a 21, 22-year-old investment banker, what do you actually do all day? All night as well, I should say, because you work all the time, right?
Yeah, it was pretty constant. I averaged probably 5-6 hours sleep a night.
And is that normal?
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. Normal for an investment banker.
Yeah.
In their early 20s. You're a junior and you are working on several projects at the same time. And if you leave at 10, you're considered to have, 10% capacity, whatever that means. And so that means you get another project because everyone else is still there till midnight. And if you've left at 10, you've left early kind of thing. I'm not sure it's like that now. I think there is more focus on a little bit more work-life balance. Yeah.
Although I don't really think that exists much. If you're going into investment banking, you know what you're getting into. But to answer your question of sort of what you're doing, just to clarify the really simple distinction, hopefully, the part in investment banking that I was in was the advisory side. So that can be M&A, that can be capital markets. So the equity or the debt side, if a company wants to raise some capital, so they might IPO, they might want to raise some debt. So I was in that side. Now, investment banks do many other things. There's sales, trading, research, IT, asset management, wealth management, loads of other things that they could do. I was very much squarely in that advisory side. So I specialized in a sector, and within that sector, you then kind of need to know all the different companies. So within healthcare, all the med tech companies, all the pharmaceuticals, all the different type of products, various different companies that are out there, and across different geographies. And so at one point in time, I might have been working on an IPO for a biotech in Switzerland, which was drafting its IPO prospectus, which is a really thick, massive document. You might also then be preparing some marketing materials for a pitch to GSK, other things. Now, it is very exciting. These are all sort of big decisions that big companies are making, and you're there as an advisor at the pivotal point quite often. Some companies hate investment bankers.
Right.
In the same way that some, and the parallel here is if you wanted to buy or sell a house and you'll get an estate agent to help you. What's a reasonable price? Is this point of time in the market the right time to go on the market? How do you market it effectively? They might connect you with a lawyer, with a broker or a financial advisor so you can figure out how much debt you can get. So your mortgage. It's basically like that, but for the corporate world.
For many people, the golden ticket is to go into private equity. That's where you and I first met, and you were working for a large private equity firm. Tell me how you got into that and what life is like in private equity.
So in terms of getting into that, so I agree that is the golden ticket for a lot of bankers. I was almost surprised by the number of people who were going into banking knowing they wanted to go into private equity. But 3 years in, I actually thought, do you know what? This private equity thing sounds better than this. So let me give that a go. Let me try. And it was particularly because I loved working with management teams, with people. I love longer term projects. Whereas as a banker, you're on 5 projects, you help at this really pivotal moment. It's done, boom, on to the next. With private equity, because you're buying the idea is to buy a company and then own it for roughly 5 years. You're going on the journey with it.
Yes.
And that was the part that I loved.
So I think a lot of people often get confused with private equity and venture capital. So venture capital is investing into small startup, often technology businesses. Private equity does investing as well, but it's slightly different.
In private equity, at least from where I was at S01, the idea is you buy a good business and you make it great.
Okay.
So you find something that is doing pretty well, that's roughly a minimum of 50 million of EBITDA.
For people who don't know EBITDA, that's what, cash profit? Let's call it that for kind of ease of use for this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you then are trying to find a company that's been doing well, but is looking to grow, and that next phase of growth needs a bit more, where it's help and the right knowledge to internationalize, to do more M&A, to streamline some of its operations. You know, maybe it has got 50 million EBITDA, but all the other competitors with similar revenue have 100 million EBITDA. So what's going on in this one?
Yeah.
And so we'd look at these companies within different sectors. And the idea really with private equity, in most sizes, but I'll stick to what S01 did, is you buy a company and look to hold on to it for about 5 years, and you roughly want to make 20% return annually, and that's about 2.5 times money multiple on the equity that you've put in on the business. That's considered a solid deal.
And for, I guess, the uninitiated, and again, from the outside in, it seems like private equity is full of very, very smart people who are dealing in pretty high stakes stuff. I mean, it's like millions, hundreds of millions or billions of pounds that these companies are worth. And as the main shareholder as the private equity, you're responsible for that.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that's a huge amount of pressure, but also, frankly, a huge amount to be gained as well. So what is the environment like in a private equity firm?
It's dynamic, right? There's a lot to do to make sure that you make that right decision. And it's very demanding. Yeah. It's demanding physically, mentally. It's taking up most of your mental capacity. Emotionally, because you're going through the ups and downs. Because guess what? If you make a wrong decision, if you buy a company but you didn't adequately weigh up the risk, whether there's a regulatory change or something that happens, you have to own that for 5 years, roughly.
Yeah.
Right? So that looms over you and your life for 5 years. You're probably going to be a director on that company, on the board. So you also have investors who are the investors who put money into the fund that the private equity then invests. That is where the equity of private equity comes from. They want to know what's going on.
Yes.
Right? It's easy when things are going well. It's difficult when it's not. So there is a lot of pressure, both time pressure when you're buying a company, but also pressure just generally from your whole environment of this has to be good.
And then, so what happened to you over time?
Yeah. Over time, I started to notice that I wasn't fully myself. I didn't have the same spark, the same excitement. This is particularly in the sort of latter 2-3 years, kind of post-COVID. So maybe that had an impact too, because COVID is pretty intense from a work perspective as well as personal things, right? And so, I started to notice I wasn't fully myself, and it was really hard to replenish the tank, to feel better. The whole 10 years, both in banking and PE, I tried to do everything.
Yeah.
The amount that I wanted to. So I knew that people, when they went into banking, they were working so hard that they lose friends because they just get out of touch. I made it my mission to not lose a single friend. And I didn't, but, at what cost, right? I was in the moments that I wasn't working hard, I was thinking, I haven't heard from that person in ages. Let me just send them a quick message. Let me just make sure that I don't stop getting invites to things, because that's the start of then me losing other things that make me happy, that make life worth living for me. And I made sure that I saw my parents almost every weekend, because seeing them was important to me. I tried to cook because I love cooking, and I need some outlets for creativity, sports, all of that. But as soon as there is a need to do all of that, plus a really demanding job that is screaming for your time a lot of the time, whether it's the work, the people, or other things, that puts a lot on any person.
And so what ultimately happened to you?
Yeah, so on that emotional side, I realized that I was just becoming more and more of a ghost. I just looked drained, pale, bags under my eyes, grey hairs like mad. I'd have my mum going, I didn't have any grey hairs at your age. Like, thanks, Mum. Thanks for the support. Clearly I'm stressed. And so I started having friends saying to me, oh, you don't look great. You're okay. And then it was the physical side that caught up. And that was when I actually thought I probably should listen to this, whether it's my body or what's going on.
And what were the symptoms?
Yeah, that was, there were a few. So for me, it was headaches. I started waking up and having headaches throughout the day. Not migraines. I don't get migraines, but just these sort of pressure headaches that, just wouldn't go away. I noticed that I was getting heart palpitations. That was really worrying.
And what does that feel like?
You just notice that your heart's just sort of starting to beat slightly off. And you can feel it. And I guess it was especially in moments of what felt like pressure or stress. I could feel it, and it would kind of throw me off a little bit. What else was there? There was...
Did you have things like brain fog, panic attacks, things like that?
No panic attacks, at least not that I know of. Brain fog, that was a weird one. I think that one was the most frustrating, because I would just forget. I would just have this cloud go over my brain, and I just sit there almost staring blankly. And there was a specific moment where I remember that I was doing something for my portfolio company. I was sitting in my office. Right, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I've done it like 50 times. I've done it so many times. I know it takes me 15 minutes. It's a repetitive process based on, how many times I've done it in the past. And 20 minutes in, I was just staring at my screen going, wait, where do I start? What do I do now? Wait, and that was when I caught myself, and I thought, something's not right. Something's really not okay. And the feelings of frustration. And the thing is, I think this is important to mention, like, yes, the work is intense, but actually what contributes a lot to it is how you talk to yourself.
Right.
And not in this weird, like, I talk to myself out loud, but everyone's got this sort of inner voice. And in those moments, especially with the brain fog, it would be, why can't you do this? Why can't you just, if you've done it so many times in the past, what's stopping you this time? It's very negative, very heavy. It just adds to the pressure. And if I'm honest, right, that's a voice that's actually been with me and motivated me forever. And the people who do well in an intense job like private equity or banking are the people who can harness that voice. And they can just go, well, I've got perspective. This isn't great. I can't do it now. I'm just going to take a break. I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. And that's not the kind of person that I've been.
Did you take some time off? What happened?
Yeah. So I went to see a doctor, and he was really, really gently encouraging of me taking time off. He said, I've seen symptoms like this before many times. We did loads of blood tests. Some things looked a little bit off, but he was like, you're not at a point where you have any clear deficiencies or anything clearly worrying yet. Right? He said, but I've seen people who have been further down the line versus where you are now, and they end up collapsing. They end up having, creating deficiencies, whether it's hormonal or other vitamins, minerals, whatever else in your body. And so he really encouraged me to take time off. And interestingly, what he said was, normally it takes people 1 month for the body to just start relaxing.
Wow.
And I said to him, well, that's wild then, because when do people relax if you take maximum a 2-week holiday? And he goes, yeah, that's the point. Right? You think that you've relaxed because you've gone on a 2-week holiday, or even a week holiday, which is worse, or at the worst, a weekend trip where you've just given yourself more adrenaline and you've got more worked up because you're cramming in a lot of things into 2 or 3 days. It's like that's not relaxing. The body at some point needs to relax and recover. You need a minimum of a month to start doing that. I thought, okay.
Wow.
That I wasn't expecting that. And then I asked him, well, and how much time roughly do you think I might need to get better? Whatever that means. He said, minimum 3 months, I think.
Wow. Okay.
So that's where I started. I started with sort of 1 month with the possibility of it being 3 and then seeing where it goes. And with the help of him, having a supportive husband, friends who, were saying, you don't look great, you probably do need to take time off.
I can relate personally to so much of this. So at the end of 2023, I came to the end of a job that I was in. I think it just hadn't really worked out. And at the time, I couldn't really understand it, if I'm honest. I was telling people that, I thought it made sense, it hadn't worked out and we parted as friends and I wanted to go and do something different. But really inside, I was thinking, I don't really get this. I've worked really hard and I think, whilst there's so many things I could improve on, I think, I was fundamentally, good at my job and was doing my best. And I think a likable person. But it was only when I look back at it now where I think, actually, I really wasn't performing well. And that's because I was incredibly tired. And I had many of those symptoms that you would say that, you talked about, constant headaches, feeling just very, very stressed, and all of the physical and mental symptoms that come with that. And at the time, I thought it was completely normal. I would, I'd wake up in the morning and I think, I really don't want to go to work today. But in my head, I thought that's what everyone thought. And so I thought I have to do something to get myself really motivated for it. So, I tried things like, cold showers or whatever. And that didn't really work. What I did find is that if I cycled to work, on a road bike as quickly as I could, literally like a kind of madman for 25, 30 minutes from door to door, I could get my heart rate high enough that it would start pumping some endorphins or, whatever that is into my body. Yeah. And also just from a kind of psychological point of view, in that because I was really struggling at work, I could say at, by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, I've actually achieved something. Yeah. And that may be the only thing that I'll achieve today, with the sitting at a computer thinking, I don't know what I'm doing here, and not really making much sense, and lots of people talking to me, and I would listen, but I couldn't recall anything that they'd said after about 5 minutes. Yeah. And again, at the time, I think because I sort of couldn't quite admit to myself that I wasn't kind of doing well on many levels, I just told myself that was completely normal.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
At what point did you start being more honest with yourself?
I finished my job at the end of September, and it was probably over the Christmas period. I had some proper time off, went on holiday with my with my young family. And then that was the time where I thought, yeah. And then eventually I realized, but we digress. What did you do to get yourself better?
So, step one was prioritizing health. It was recognizing, getting that perspective, essentially. So similar to you in that sense, and going, no, something isn't okay, and I need to address that. So I took the time off, and the first 2 months I was basically bedbound, because basically what happened is the body finally had a moment to relax, and it just lent in, and I was sleeping 14 hours plus napping 2 hours, and that still didn't feel like enough. The body was fully shutting down, and I really didn't know what was going on. So part of the recovery was, let's figure out what's actually happened physically. How did the mental side of it contribute? Were there other factors that were in my control? What was the work side? What was me? What was other events? Just to make sense of it all. So those 2 months, roughly, I was at home most of the time, just sitting around on my own and stewing in my thoughts, which is dangerous too, because it's a long time to sit with that. But it's also a great way to start being honest with yourself and start going, well, this is shit. And I kind of got myself here. And I see it was almost this shift from doing all the time to then having to be.
Right. What does that mean?
I'm smiling because it was a thought that I had in the midst of my wallowing in bed. And the time that I had, I was also exploring things that I'd missed out. So things like creativity. I was trying to cook a lot more. I was painting, drawing, writing poems, playing my guitar, like really trying to, dragging myself out for walks occasionally to just feel better. And I mention all of that because in that space where I was of this being a bit more creative, this idea that I came up with was, you can choose what song you're in at the moment. And this is going to be really weird, but I'm going to explain it anyway.
Go for it.
So it's the idea of doing and being. So do, be.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe you can see where this is going. But I kind of thought, oh, well, most of my life so far has been do, be, be, do, be. Like, so lots of do's, a few be's. So it was always about get stuff done, progress, move forward, be productive. If you do something, it needs to be for an end, and not much being, just, enjoying a walk, enjoying a nice meal, a nice conversation. I would throw them in, but because of the industry I was in and various other ways I motivated myself, my song was very do heavy. And now I was shifted into being very be heavy. I couldn't do anything because of the headaches, the brain fog, the exhaustion. So I just had to be. So my song was a be, do. Those are sort of these two extremes. And ideally you find a song for yourself that is a healthier and more suitable combination of be and do.
How or when did you decide, actually, I no longer want to be in the world of high-flying private equity investing. I fundamentally want to change my life.
This was an opportunity. I took the time to think, what are the big questions? Let me answer them and take that top-down approach for my career and my life going forward. It sounds easy. It took a lot, and you end up going around in circles. Sometimes it's frustrating because you think, I thought this was my value, but now for some reason I've changed my mind. What is it? All right, it's not this thing that you do and you just get clarity. All right, I was doing it for months and months and months. I came to the realization that going forward, I'd like to be able to prioritize my health. I'd like to have more control over my time and how I split it between work, friends, family, other things that matter to me. And I'd like to have an environment, specifically a working environment, that suits me, my personality, my style of working. And when I really boiled it down to that, and along with wants, values and other things, I just thought, I can't do this job anymore.
How did the move into coaching come about?
I did spend a lot of time exploring, in this exploring phase when I was bedbound and whatever else. I did lean into those things that people sometimes daydream about when they're in their corporate job. So some people are like, yeah, I'll open a farm or I'll open a cafe and these sorts of different things. And I, given how much I love food, I was thinking, maybe I go to cookery school, maybe I go traveling and I get a idea of what I want to do from doing that. Maybe I open a cafe or a bakery, a bit like, my grandma on that side of the family, carrying that on. But I lent into them a little bit more beyond just daydreaming. And I did go and speak to restaurant owners, business owners, research cooking schools and all of that. And the more I looked into it and made it feel something beyond that daydream, the more I realized, oh no, it doesn't fully sit. It's a passion, but I want to leave it as that. It didn't feel right. And so through that exploration process, I was still, as I was saying, sort of reflecting on what I'm good at, what I like, what I want, what I value. And I had my top-down approach of, this is what I want roughly my life to look like. And that's when that idea of coaching clicked. In my career, I loved mentoring people. I loved leading teams. I loved being around people, creating positive environments. And if I looked at parts of my personality and what I wanted, where my flow state was, it was always around the people that make things happen. What is going on in this dynamic that means that this individual who's normally really confident suddenly isn't, right? I love looking at that, analyzing that, understanding what's going on, what's that underlining driver or motivator, and talking about it. You could probably see now, it lights me up. And so coaching just seemed to be this thing of like, have you heard of the concept Ikigai?
I haven't.
So it's this Japanese concept. I hopefully won't butcher it. But Ikigai essentially means a reason to live. And it's this mega Venn diagram of 4 circles. And the Ikigai is that central point right in the middle. And the 4 circles are what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what makes you money. And if you can find that thing that sits in the middle of that, that's a great, that's almost a purpose thing, right? I don't know if it really is about purpose, but that's the Ikigai. And for me, coaching fits into that quite nicely.
And when you look now, look at yourself now, how far along are you on that journey to maintaining the life that you want and prioritizing the things that you want to prioritize?
I feel like I've been living by it well, which is why I've recovered, right? I feel much better. I feel like myself again. I feel like I bring the spark, the energy, the fun, because for me, if you're not enjoying something, what is the point, right? Yeah. Like, yes, it's a given that life is difficult. Of course, there will always be something that's difficult, but why choose to make certain things difficult when inevitably there will be challenges anyway? So I'm now choosing to do things in a way that, if it feels like it's going to be awful or lots of pressure, it could be a momentary thing, then don't do it just in that moment. It's fine. It's okay. Yeah. And quite often, I still end up doing it because ultimately it is going to help me get that client or whatever else now.
Yes.
But it's just about less forcing things to happen.
So now you're in a new part of your life.
Yes.
What is FireUp? And what do you do?
Yeah. So FireUp is an executive coaching business. And we work with ambitious professionals who are looking to make a change or grow in some aspect of their life, whether it's personal or professional, and often the two are quite combined. And we're there as a thought partner to help get them there faster and with more focus and energy. So, for example, someone might be gunning for a promotion at work. Someone might be looking to get a little bit more confidence when they're presenting to their leaders. Someone might just be trying to figure out what next. What do I do next? Like we've been talking about figuring out the next step. Someone might be trying to develop certain skills to get them to advance within their leadership role. Any of these and more. And the idea is that I work typically one-on-one with a professional. They can be, in finance, they can be lawyers, consultants, VCPE, they can run their own business. And we'll work over a 4 to 6 month period. And we'll be working towards goals that they have set for themselves. And the idea is that I'm there to then bring clarity, challenge, and courage to help them get to those goals.
When you're talking to your clients, what type of challenges are people typically going through?
A lot of the time, it's ideas like balance. They want more balance. They feel like they're neglecting certain parts of their lives. It's things like time management. So similar to balance, but just how do you manage all of the stuff that needs to be done? There's a lot of that. There's this idea of self-belief, I'll call it. People call it confidence. I think quite often people who are confident are told they're not confident, but it's not that. It's moments of lacking self-belief. Again, that voice that might go, well, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then, well, there you go. You've planted the seed and guess what? It's probably going to come true.
Yes.
And so working with that. So there's that self-belief. So I had one client who had been promoted to be a senior leader. He is a senior leader, yet he didn't believe it.
Right.
So our focus was on, well, how do you see yourself? How do others see you? What is your role? What is it that you want to bring more of that will help you believe that you are a senior leader? Things like that. There's so many, quite a few career changes. And just, a lot of people saying, this time I want to make a decision that is sustainable. I don't want to just be reacting because I want to leave this place and find something soon. I want to really think about where I'm going so that it feels right for the next 5 years. And guess what? To do that, you need to go to the wants, the values, the beliefs, all sorts of things that sit a bit deeper to then figure out, well, where is that alignment? Where will you find it? Something that my coach said to me and that I also say to clients where it's relevant. And it's this question of, what if that belief that you hold, that thing that your voice is telling you that has helped you get to where you are now, is no longer serving you?
Okay.
So what if, you can tell me, but, well, sure, Daria, but, I've got to this great position because I kept telling myself, you have to work hard. No matter what, you have to work hard. And I say, sure. I believe you. I believe that it has, you believe it, so I'm going to believe you because that's your world. And it's your reality. But you're also telling me that you're exhausted. And you're also telling me that you don't have the same spark or thing that makes you happy. So what if it's not that foolproof tool that's going to keep getting you to where you want to be? What if it needs to be something different now? And that was something that I found very, very powerful. I'd recommend people to get to know their drivers. So the first step for any change is self-awareness, right? And this is a concept within transactional analysis, which is more on the psychology side of things, but coaching sort of dips into psychology quite often. And it's the idea that we all have one or a few of these 5 drivers that are part of that inner critic voice. And often it's something that we've been told in our childhood, in the past. And it's be strong, try hard, please others, be perfect, or hurry up. Did any of those resonate?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So for me, it's the be perfect and please others. I know I said, work hard, and that is another one. But for me, it was those two, right? The people pleasing component. And I know a lot of people have that. A lot of my clients have that.
If there are people who are experiencing similar symptoms to what you went through, what would your advice be?
I'd say, first of all, listen to yourself, but in a compassionate way. So not I've noticed that I feel tired. Why am I being weak? But with gentle curiosity of what's happening, what might be causing this, how am I really feeling? So invite those questions in the same way that you probably would with a friend who told you they weren't feeling well or feeling great. Then I'd say, if you come to the point of deciding that taking time off is the right thing for you to do, I would hope that you don't see it as a failure or as a weakness. It's what you need at that point in time, and you're an adult, probably, who's been working for a while, so trust yourself when your body and other things are telling you that you probably need this. Yes, it's going to be a hard decision to make. Yes, then you might feel that there's stigma around it. You might also be surprised how many people are supportive. I at least found that from my experience. I had a supportive manager. I had colleagues who were really great that I felt I could trust and talk to. And the more people I spoke to, the more there was this ongoing effect of, oh yeah, I know someone who's been through that. And then you hear other experiences, so you don't feel alone. Yeah. And the final thing I'd say is explore what might be causing this. It might not just be work, right? It might mainly or only be work. But yeah, go through a bit of exploration, see what isn't sitting right with you and your body at the moment.
Having gone through what you've gone through and come out of the other end, what learning would you pass on to other people?
Ooh, beyond all the wonderful snippets so far. I think the main one, in terms of anyone going on this kind of journey, especially where they don't feel like themselves, and they might be exhausted, perhaps, symptoms of a burnout, that kind of thing, I would say be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, because it is a volatile, non-linear process. You may think that you're recovering, you may be better. That doesn't mean the symptoms won't come back. When this was happening to me during my recovery phase, one friend said it quite nicely, where I was like, I'm so frustrated. I was so frustrated. I had 5-6 weeks, suddenly no headaches, was great, not great, but feeling better. I could feel the progress. And then a couple of weeks later, headaches came back. The fatigue came back. I was so frustrated by it. And the friend said, think of it like an earthquake, where you'll have the main earthquake, but then there are aftershocks as well. But take comfort in the knowledge that you've been through the worst, and the aftershocks are much smaller, and you know how to navigate them. That gave me some comfort. Still many frustration, but But in case it helps for someone to hear that, it's going to be up and down.
How do you think employers can work with their employees to make sure that they don't get burnt out, that they don't go through this?
Do your best to create an environment where this is something that can be spoken about. It doesn't have to be talked about in the corridors with everybody, but that there are some individuals within the company who will listen, and where it does feel like a safe space, because you're not going to talk to someone where you feel that there might be repercussions for your perception within the workplace or your promotion point or whatever it is. And so creating a genuine safe space, whether that's with one individual internally or a few, or working with coaches or other people externally, but creating a space where people feel they can and will be listened without repercussions.
How can people find out more about FireUp and the work that you're doing?
So people can find me on my website. It's fireup.coach, very simply. You can email me at daria@fireup.coach, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Daria Ibrulj, with a silent J on the end of Ibrulj.
Super. Thank you so much, Daria.
Thank you, Josh.
It's been great speaking with you.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Air Supply from JO Collective. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, you can leave a review, preferably a positive one. And see you soon. Thank you.